Hey guys, what's going on? Um, so I'm just reading through the news and I see destructive, or Microsoft warns of destructive cyber attack on Ukrainian computer networks. Wow, this seems to be one of the biggest cybersec issues going on right now. Um, yeah, let's just get right into it. So, the malware was revealed as a Russian troops remained massed at the Ukrainian border and after Ukrainian government agencies had their websites defaced. Wow. Yeah, this seems pretty big. Um, let's see. The Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Kiev. The malicious code appears to have been deployed around the time that Russia said that talks with the United States and NATO had essentially stalled. Um, hmm. Alright, so David E. Sanger. Ooh, I actually read a book from this guy, David E. Sanger. Actually, one of my favorite books ever. It's called The Perfect Weapon. Yeah, this book is really good. I listened to it on Audible. Um, he talks about Stuxnet. Uh, he talks about Russiagate in the 2017 election. Um, this guy's been a reporter on cybersecurity for quite some time. This was definitely a very good book. I would recommend it to anyone. All right, so I mean, very credible author on this article. So, coming out of Washington, Microsoft warned on Saturday evening that it had detected a highly destructive form of malware in dozens of government and private computer networks in Ukraine that appeared to be waiting to be triggered by an unknown actor. Wow, so government and private computer networks. I mean, this seems like a pretty big deal. So, in a blog post, should we go ahead and check this out? Destructive malware, okay. Yeah, we can just go ahead and keep reading. The company said that on Thursday, around the same time government agencies in Ukraine found that their websites had been defaced, investigators who watched over Microsoft's global networks detected the code. These systems spanned multiple government, nonprofit, and information technology organizations, all based in Ukraine. So, yeah, it's looking like another example of Russia using Ukraine as a puppet state. But, you know, on Sunday, good old President Biden, his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, said the government was examining the code that Microsoft first reported. We've been warning for weeks and months, both publicly and privately, that cyber attacks could be part of a broad-based Russian effort to escalate in Ukraine. And this has been going on for a while. I know a couple examples of Russia attacking the power grid, key infrastructure in Ukraine. But one of the biggest problems with Ukraine is that it has pretty outdated infrastructure. I recall one of the reasons Russia failing to hack the key power grid supplies was that it was built in the Soviet era Union, and it was controlled by an actual physical switch. So yeah, Ukraine has that going for itself. Mr. Sullivan said on CBS, "Face the nation. Nothing Russia's long history of using cyber weapons against Ukraine's power grid." That's what I was talking about. Government ministries and commercial firms. But he cautioned that we have not specifically attributed this attack yet, and that Microsoft and other firms had not either. But we're working hard on attribution, he said, adding that it would not surprise me one bit if this ends up being attributed to Russia. And, yeah, I don't feel like anyone would be exactly surprised if this ends up being Russia, but it is fair that auditors, forensics have not, you know, founded that Russia was behind this, so I wouldn't have your opinions formulated too soon. All right, let's continue. But he cautioned that we have not specifically attributed. Oh, wait, I already went over this. The code appears to have been deployed around the time that Russian diplomats, after 3 days of meeting with the United States and NATO over the massing of Russian troops at the Ukrainian border, declared that the talks had essentially hit a dead end. Yep. Russian forces now surround Ukraine on 3 sides, and Western officials fear a military operation could start as soon as this month. I mean, let's be real, this has been, I feel like this has been going on for the last decade, and not a whole lot has happened, I would have to wait and see on this issue, really. Ukrainian officials initially blamed a group in Belarus for the defacement of their government websites. Though they said they suspected Russian involvement, the Ministry of Digital Development said in a statement on Sunday that a number of government agencies had been struck by destructive malware, presumably the same code that Microsoft reported. All evidence indicates that Russia is behind the cyber attack. Okay, well, this Ministry of Digital Development has very strong words towards Russia. The statement said, Moscow continues to wage a hybrid war and is actively building up its forces and the information in cyberspaces. But the ministry provided no evidence, and early attribution of attacks is frequently wrong or incomplete, and that is 100% true. Don't blame people before you have the evidence. That doesn't look good for foreign policy. You're not making any allies doing this. Microsoft said that it cannot yet identify the group behind the intrusion, but that it did not appear to be an attacker that its investigators had seen before. The code, as described by the company's investigators, is meant to look like ransomware. It freezes up all computer functions and data and demands a payment in return. But there is no infrastructure to accept money, leading investigators to conclude that the goal is to inflict maximum damage, not raise cash. Interesting. So, what kind of organization would not want to raise cash? I'm thinking maybe a nation state. I mean, they're not worried about cash, just maximizing damage. And I feel like Russia is pretty known to maximize damage. So, yeah, it's a little interesting. It is possible that the destructive software has not spread too widely and that Microsoft's disclosure will make it harder for the attack to metastasize. But it is also possible that the attackers will now launch the malware and try to destroy as many computers and networks as possible. Wow. We made it public in order to give the government, organizations, and entities in Ukraine the chance to find the malware and remediate, said Tom Bird, Microsoft's Vice President for Customer Security and Trust, who directs the company's effort to detect and head off attacks. In this case, he said, investigators from the company's cybercrime unit saw unusual action in the networks it usually polices. Okay, and we have a little picture. It's in Russian, I believe. And that looks like a Ukrainian flag being X'd out. Interesting. Ukrainian officials initially blamed a group in Belarus. Okay. Warnings like this one from Microsoft can help abort an attack before it happens. If computer users look to root out the malware before it's activated, but it can also be risky. Exposures changes the calculus for the perpetrator, who, once discovered, may have nothing to lose in launching the attack to see what destruction it wreaks. So far, there is no evidence that the destructive malware has been unleashed by the hackers, who placed it in the Ukrainian systems. But Mr. Sullivan pressed on whether the United States would begin to invoke financial and technological sanctions if Russia's attacks were limited to cyberspace, rather than a physical invasion, so that it's important first to get definite finding on the source of the attack. This is very important in today's world of foreign diplomacy and relations. We don't quite understand how much a cyber attack is equivalent to physical damage. I mean, is hacking a power grid equivalent to sending like an F-22, F-35 bomber and bombing the power grid? I mean, of course, if a country bombs your power grid, you're going to retaliate a lot different. But let's continue. If it turns out that Russia is pummeling Ukraine with cyber attacks, he said, and if that continues over a period ahead, we will work with our allies on the appropriate response. Very understandable. Understand the escalating tensions over Ukraine, brewing conflict. Antagonism between Ukraine and Russia has been simmering since 2014, when the Russian military crossed into Ukrainian territory, annexing Crimea, which is that peninsula, and whipping up a rebellion in the east. A tenuous ceasefire was reached in 2015, but peace has been elusive, as it always has been in Ukraine. Mr. Sullivan said the United States had been working with Ukraine to harden its system and American networks if the string of ransomware and other attacks from Russia accelerates in the United States. For President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia, Ukraine has often been a testing range for cyberweapons. True. An attack on Ukraine's Central Election Commission during a presidential election in 2014, in which Russia sought unsuccessfully to change the result, proved to be a model for the Russian intelligence agencies. The United States later found that they had infiltrated the servers of the Democratic National Convention, the DNC, the good old DNC, in the United States in 2015. The first of two major attacks on Ukraine's electric grid shut off the lights for hours in different parts of the country, including Kiev, the capital. And in 2017, businesses and government agencies in Ukraine were hit with a destructive software called NotPetya, which exploited holes in a type of tax preparation software that was widely used in the country. The attack shut down swaths of the economy and hit FedEx and the shipping companies Maersk as well. American intelligence officials later traced it to Russian actors. That software, at least in its overall design, bears some resemblance to what Microsoft warned on Saturday. The new attack would wipe out hard drives clean and destroy files. Some defense experts have said such an attack could be a prelude to a ground invasion by Russia. Others think it could be a substitute for an invasion. If the attackers believe the cyber strike would not prompt the kind of financial and technological sanctions that Mr. Biden has vowed to impose in a response. John Holtquist, a leading cyber intelligence analyst at Mandiant, said on Sunday that his firm had been telling its clients to prepare for destructive attacks, including attacks that are designed to resemble ransomware. Wow, this story is seems like we have a lot to look forward to in the next week or so. I mean, by the time you watch this, there could be a lot of updates to the story, and I plan on covering it. I'll be looking at it every day. He noted the Russian hacking unit known as Sandworm. Let's go ahead and give a quick look at Russian hacking unit Sandworm. Unit 74455, Russian cyber military unit of the GRU, organization in charge of the Russian military intelligence. Interesting. Sound pretty scary. Yeah. Which has since been closely linked to the Russian military intelligence agency, the GRU, had spent recent years developing more sophisticated means of critical infrastructure attack, including in Ukraine's power grid. It seems like Russia really likes attacking Ukraine's power grid. They also perfected the fake ransomware attack, Mr. Holtquist said, referring to attacks that are meant at first to look like a criminal extortion effort, but are actually intended to destroy data or cripple an electric utility, a water or gas line supply, or a government ministry. They are doing this before NotPetya, and they have tried many times after. Wow, this is very interesting. I look forward to covering this as the story unfolds. I mean, you have some foreign relations, always with Russia, Ukraine, NATO, the U.S., and then you have this this bigger issue of cyber attacks. I mean, this could cost a lot of money and hurt a lot of people, but we'll wait and see. Thank you for listening. This is my journey in cybersec, and most days, Monday through Friday, I upload videos about news regarding cybersecurity, training, textbooks. I'm currently working on a series with CompTIA Network Plus, so if you're interested in any of this, go ahead and click subscribe, and I'll see you around. See ya.